Welcome to Since Rookie Season,
Well, the summer before.
a Heated Rivalry fan companion podcast where your hosts, Amanda, Lau, and Lauren, break down the episodes from the Crave Canada television series, The Game Changers novels, various media surrounding this fan phenomenon.
Today, we have a special episode with a special new guest. We will be discussing race and racism in the Heated Rivalry universe. So stay tuned.
Editing Amanda popping in to say that we recorded this episode a couple of weeks ago before the Rachel Reed Discord leak saga that's been unfolding in recent days. I'm not sure if it'll have faded by the time this comes out, but that's why it was not mentioned in this episode. I'm sure if those leaks had happened before the episode, before we recorded, we would have mentioned it. But if you're wondering why that it's not mentioned, is because it hadn't happened yet. Back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Okay, hi, welcome back. Last week we talked about intersectionality, which was so fun, and we loved it. I missed you all during this week.
I miss you too.
Oh, thank
you.
And you know what? Same. Today, we have a new guest. Ethan uses they, them pronouns, and we're gonna let them introduce themselves.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me.
Of course.
As Lauren introduced, I'm Ethan. I use they, them pronouns. I am a senior at the University of Michigan. I'm about to graduate, so I'm almost free.
Yay! That's exciting.
But yeah, when I'm not, I guess, studying, I'm freaking out over Heated Rivalry on the internet.
And you know what? We love that about you.
That's so fair. Yeah.
Yeah, like all of us, actually.
All the time, constantly.
So, like, basically how we found you was we had seen reels, and I think you were recommended by someone over at Seaweed Brain, possibly.
Yeah. Erica Ito, thank you. But from the Seaweed Brain podcast was like, I haven't watched Heated Rivalry, but I came across this reel by Ethan. I love Ethan. Please have them on your podcast.
I love Erica so much.
Yeah,
I adore Erica.
So you make a lot of reels about, or I don't know if they're TikToks and reels, but whatever platform they are on,
yes,
about Heated Rivalry, and that's how we've like come across your content. But if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I originally got into Heated Rivalry in, I think, 2023 or 2024. Ooh. I am a book fan, okay? I've been reading the books. I have copies of the mass market paperbacks. I have them because I bought them way back when, and now I'm like so glad I bought them. I'm so glad I own them. And they have like the, shirtless men on the cover, but
yes,
hey, they're out of print now. They're specialty items. But I've just like been very familiar with Heated Rivalry and with like the Game Changers universe, the books, I guess, for a while. And then when the show was announced, actually I got to the show a little bit late, I'll be honest. I think I saw the announcement like 6 months before it aired, and I was like, wait, they're making a show?
Mm-hmm.
They're making a show of like one of my favorite romance books ever. Like, what the heck? Yeah, I just got super excited. I was on Twitter for the beginning, and then it got really terrible, so I left Twitter.
Yeah.
But so I've just been following Heated Rivalry for a while, and I guess like on the like fandom side or content creation side, like I've been making videos on TikTok since 2020.
Okay.
Originally about Percy Jackson, which is how Erica and Seaweed Brain podcast knows me. I think I was on 3 of their episodes or 2 of them. But I was making like just a bunch of Percy Jackson videos. And then I kind of moved into just like general book content. And then I started posting on Instagram last year. And now I'm here, mostly a Heated Rivalry account, but sometimes other things slip through the cracks.
That's okay. Very fair, for sure. Okay, so we've been asking all of our guests and ourselves, basically our question for the season is, why is Heated Rivalry so addictive? And as a book person, I guess you knew this before all of us, so tell us the reasons.
Yeah, Heated Rivalry I remember reading the books. I read them both in one sitting, like Heated Rivalry and then The Long Game, just like bam, bam, right after the other.
Okay.
And because they're just so fast paced, the chemistry is so good.
Yeah.
I guess that's my answer. Like, I just felt compelled to read from the start. And I think with the books in particular, it's like a in medias res. Is that the right use of that? But like, it starts after, it starts in 2016 and then goes back to their like rookie season or before rookie season. So it's like, wait, I know where they end up. I have to figure out how they got there, which I love that structure. I'm not, well, I don't know how it would work in the show if they'd structure it the same way, but I kind of do. I miss that for this show.
No, real. Yeah. I'm really like, I'm interested to see your like, because I also read the book before it like came, like before it was like big, but it did not like, it was not one of my favorite. I was reading like exclusively hockey romance books. And so it like did not clock for me even as like one of my top 10 faves.
Whoa.
And then I didn't read The Long Game until like Heated Rivalry became a thing. So like I was kind of late on that. So we're definitely gonna have some, and they've just read it like, Amanda and Lau have read it like after the fact. Like after
wow.
So I think we all kind of have differing like ideas and thoughts about it for sure.
Got a range of opinion.
Yes, always.
And experience.
Exactly.
For sure. Okay, so thank you for that little introduction to you. We're gonna now get into our conversation. Just as a reminder, we were talking about race and racism. I wanted to offer a little bit of positionality, like that I am a white person, and in white culture, we don't talk about race. We specifically are trained out of talking about the topic. We avoid the words, and it is something that we need to do because, like, I have written academic articles on whiteness and the impacts that it has on fandom. And so it is something that needs to be talked about. So I just wanted to offer a little bit of positionality for myself. And if any of you would like to do that as well to kind of start off this conversation, that's totally fine. And if you don't want to share, that's also very fine.
As you know, listeners, if this is not your first time listening, I come from a different culture than Lauren and Amanda and Ethan. So I am white from Colombia, which kind of changes depending on where I am, which is something I talked about last episode. So if I am in the US, I have to like check the Hispanic box, but I never check the POC box because I consider myself as white because of the positionality that I hold in my country, which is a very segregated country. However, we as a culture have grown up hearing that we don't have racism. Why? Because the idea of racism that we have is very much attached to the US and the civil rights movement in the US, and it worked differently here. Like the segregation logics of it, everything was different because our colonizers, so the Spaniards, did practice a lot of horrible rapey breeding with indigenous and African people. And so, as my mother used to say, but she has been schooled on the matter, todos somos mestizos. We're all mestizos here. That's like kind of the mindset that we have. And it really takes a lot of education to realize that that is not the case, that we do segregate in races. And you can see that in the geography of the country, even in the city, who goes where, who lives where, is very clear. So, yeah. That's me.
I'll back up what Lauren said in that I am white. I have not written professionally as Lauren has. I've written for my sociology classes during my undergrad, but I've never published anything. But I am very white. I was raised, standard white, middle class, the standard whiteness, I guess. And I really appreciate what Lau said. I'm going to put a pin in some of that, of the like, depending on where you travel and where you go, you're perceived differently. I want to circle back to that later in a point that I have, but from my positionality, I am white and have only read stories from people of color, or have like read experiences or studied it from an academic lens, but have not experienced that personally directly in my life.
Yeah, I guess, well, I'm different. I am.
What? No way.
But well, for the listeners who are not familiar with me and haven't seen my beautiful face every day on their
Why
Instagram
not?
feed,
Gorgeous.
I am brown. I am specifically Indian, and within that, I am Bengali and Malayali. So yeah, I'm Asian, which is gonna be relevant for this conversation, I assume.
Mhm.
But I do want to make
Yes.
it clear I'm South Asian specifically. I'm
Mhm.
not East Asian, not Southeast Asian, not anything else. I'm Desi, Indian, whatever you want to call it.
For sure.
But yeah, and I also have like in my classes I've like encountered texts and experiences from like people of color, marginalized people, mainly in the US or like in the imperial core. So that's another important, I guess,
Mhm.
identity that I have is I'm a person of color that lives in the imperial core, and that's like the experience that I'm most familiar with. So
Yeah, for sure. I think that's also, yeah, like Amanda and I are also US based, also a part of the Imperial Core. Like, and I think like the way that why did you laugh?
I just laugh. It just every time I think of the U.S. Empire, I just like
Oh, it's a bad empire. Oh, we're
it's
aware.
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm
Is it
too
an
close to
empire?
Venezuela. I'm too close to Venezuela right now. I'm just like, ew. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I thought I was saying something wrong, and I was like,
No,
"Wow, what
no,
am I
no, no,
saying
no, no,
wrong?"
no, 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 no.
No,
It's just the the feeling
yeah.
yeah,
that
Yeah.
I
no,
get.
real.
Yeah.
No, how I feel every day.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, we also want to recognize that a lot of this conversation is going to be like, while Lao, yes, has a different experience, like with race, a lot of it is going to be coming from like US perspectives of race. And that might be different than I assume it's similar to what I've read about like Asian Canadian like experiences, but it might be different. So yeah, just wanted to point that out as well. Also. Okay, cool. So the reason why we want to talk to Ethan about race is because you like very pointedly had several reels discussing Shane's race in Heated Rivalry and in the TV show. And so like what made you interested in talking about that like kind of side to things?
Yeah, so as I said, I read the books super early on. And even when I read the books for the first time, I was like, huh, Shane is Asian, supposedly, or he is white and
Mm.
Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
But at
Mhm.
that time, I was like, haha, silly little hockey romance. Like, I don't care. I'm just going to read this and like move on. You know, I feel like I've, I've done this a lot when I read fiction. I'm trying to get better about it. But growing up, when I read books, I would just be like, this isn't that deep. Like, this is just for my entertainment. I would tell myself, like, I'm not worried about how my race or other people's races are being depicted right now. I just want to like read and have a good time. To go
Mm-hmm.
back to Percy Jackson, one of the only Indian characters in Percy Jackson is like in the first book, and he's only there so they can like make fun of his name.
Mm.
And like I literally did not clock that as a child. Like I had to go
Mm-hmm.
back in high school and like read that and be like, that is so fucked up that I just like that just
Mm-hmm.
went over my head, you know? But I feel like I had that experience growing up, just like reading and being like, whatever, like this wasn't written, or I don't know. I would have to convince myself like this isn't malicious. They're just like it just exists like that. That's just how fiction is. That's how like I'm going to be portrayed. So I shouldn't really take issue with it because if I took
Mm-hmm.
issue with it, then I wouldn't be able to enjoy anything.
Mm.
So that was my experience reading Heated Rivalry the first time. I was like, I really like this character dynamic. I really like the plot. I like the chemistry. I like X, Y, and Z. So I'm just gonna put that aside.
Mm-hmm.
But what really got me was I made a video about this too, but it was reading Role Model. Is that the
Mhm.
book with Fabian? Why am I
No, Tough
forgetting
Guy.
the name?
No,
No,
that's
Tough Guy. I
Tough
read
Guy.
Tough
Yeah.
Guy. My bad.
No, you're okay.
There's 7 books. It's fine.
There's so many, and they all have the same structured titles.
Yes, The Long Game and Unrivaled are the only ones that
Right?
don't fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so what really got me is when I read Tough Guy, which is Ryan Price and Fabian Salah's book. And
Mhm.
I picked it up because I was like, Fabian Salah, that sounds like a brown person. Oh my God, there's actually going to be like a person of color. Like, and not just like, not to discount like Asians and their like marginalization, but like a brown person whose both parents are brown. So I was just assuming going into that book, I was like, oh, maybe there's going to be some discussion of race or like representation of a non-white culture on page, and that did not happen.
No.
That didn't happen.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And also, what I will say also, Fabian is Lebanese, and it's like up in the air whether you consider that to be brown. I do.
I do. I think
Yeah,
we all
like
do.
I've heard like I don't know. I've heard from like Lebanese people. It's a complicated. It's a complicated. I feel like yeah. It's anyways. So I I would consider Fabian brown, but
Yes.
the book didn't consider him brown. That's for sure.
Nope. And you know what? And that's maybe a repeating trend maybe here in this book, in these books.
Mm-hmm.
But before we launch ourselves off the cliff, what is like one thing that we all want our listeners to keep in mind like during this conversation that we have about race? Does anybody want to go first?
I just had this thought that I wanted to bring up during this episode. When I was in my undergrad, my sociology classes, it kind of became apparent at a certain point that race is a social construct and we say that about gender a lot, in the way that it is socially constructed in how we perceive it and how we categorize people, in just how we sort people into our brains based on the color of their skin, their ethnicity, and so on. It's a sort of like identity group to organize people. I mean that it's a social construct insofar as that it changes over time, space, place, etc. Going back to like, as Lau said, in different places she's perceived differently, and in this way it's different. And I mentioned in our intersectionality episode, there are people who you can't give them a check one box and check one race. There are people who have so many different races or backgrounds to them, but it's a social construct, and also it has real impacts on people. Their race in the way of categorizing people is used, I mean, as we should know, for oppression, to marginalize people to other people, so that way whoever has power can say, oh, these people are different, I'm going to hold power over them. And in that way, it's important to understand that it's made up in the way that it is. We just put like names to these things, to people from these places or people that look like this, but it's all like most human things, it's made up, but it still has impact on people. And we know about this through marginalized identities. So I wanted to kind of keep that in mind, that like race is a social construct, but that doesn't negate how its impacts on people and how race works in our system, the interlocking systems of oppression that we use in this world, or that are used in this world to other people. Also relevant was brought up about talking about different places and how race dynamics can be different, and how we're us gathered here are US based. Not to be that guy that was like, I did a study abroad, but I did a study abroad in New Zealand, and there the race dynamics were not how it is in the US. In the US, I feel like our race dynamics are very white people and black people, or descendants of slaves or African Americans. And in New Zealand, or Aotearoa, it was the Maori people and the Pacific Islanders were that was like the like marginalized group, the other group, and then the white people are the descendants of colonizers. And that was different. That was different for me coming from the US, and that was to me very eye-opening to be aware of. Is like, in the US, it's not, our indigenous people are a subset of marginalized people, but that is not the main race difference here. And like here, growing up in Florida, everything, the like subheadings, like if something's in another language, it's usually Spanish is like the second language for things, but in Aotearoa it was usually Te Reo Maori. So I just thought that was like interesting. And we mentioned being from the US, and like, what'd y'all call it, colonize, no, industrial, no, what'd you call it, the core,
Imperial core.
Imperial core. Thank you. I forgot the word. I haven't heard that before, or maybe I have and I forgot, but I'm just so used to saying Western. But I feel like Imperial core is more encompassing of it because it's not geographically locked. So I feel like Imperial core, that is a very related discussion there. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I wanted to go kind of in the same wavelength as you. As we think, like, one thing I really want everyone to keep in mind is, if racism varies from like if our concept of race varies from context to context, right? So we're saying like different countries have different ideas of race and how they categorize it and how they read other people. Even though, of course, with colonialism and globalization, we have kind of like started to absorb the codes of those in power. So is racism. Like how we fight racism, how we use it as well as a tool for oppression varies. And I think one of the examples that for me is like super shocking and interesting is what happens in what after the Europeans came to the Caribbean was called the La Española, is the island where Haiti and the Dominican Republic are placed. And if you look at both sides of that island, you have two fascinating and also terrifying, in the case of the Dominican Republic, ways of interpreting race and of establishing an idea of the national identity. So after the Haitian Revolution, the Constitution says that everyone who's Haitian is black. So it's not about the color of your skin, but about the fact that you belong to a black republic and you belong to an oppressed nation, to a nation that has to survive during centuries of being like the example of like this is what's gonna happen if you get independence. We're gonna miserable. So you are black if you're born in Haiti. The Dominican Republic inherited a lot of like the ideals of their colonizers of Spain, and there's like centuries of hate and tension between the two countries, between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And so the government and national discourse is they there are no black Dominicans. That doesn't exist. We are not black. Haitians are black. To the point where if I were to have a baby in the Dominican Republic, that baby would have a passport from the Dominican Republic state. But if a Haitian person, especially someone who is black, that like dark skin, they would not have a nation, that baby, because they're not born in Haiti, but they're also born in a country that would not recognize them as citizens. So because there are no black Dominicans, which we know from demographics and from using our own eyes, it's not
it's not true.
But it's part of the discourse to fight and exclude Haiti from the conversation, and to like it's also the thing that justifies stuff like la masacre del Perejil, which was a horrible massacre in the border where a lot of Dominicans killed Haitians or people suspected of being Haitians that were working in the Dominican side of the border during the dictatorship of Trujillo. So I find that fascinating that you get two countries that make it a state policy to determine that all their citizens are black or all the citizens are white. You know, that like there's no way of like we're gonna ignore all the codes, like the visual codes that we inherited from our colonizers to understand race, and we're gonna craft a new way of understanding race in one side as a symbol of resistance against the racism of the different empires that surround the island, and in the other side a way to pass as better than Haiti, a way to like climb up on the race hierarchy as a nation. So I find that fascinating, and I think that illuminates, I bring it up now because that illuminates the way no matter what we say today, this is so dependent, like the categories that we're gonna use, the names that we're gonna use to explain things might not make a lot of sense in other contexts, and you need to situate the conversation. So we're situating this conversation in the North American core of the empire, right?
Yeah. Ethan, do you have anything that you want our listeners to keep in mind during this conversation?
Yes. Well, thank you, Amanda and Lau. Those were really beautiful thoughts. But I do want to say, I'm assuming anyone who's listening to this podcast won't have like you're not the target audience for what I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I think, or like the reactions that I've gotten to my videos on race, a lot of the negative reactions have been like, or have been like following the thought process that I myself had when I first read Heated Rivalry, which was like, this is just a silly little romance. Like, stop thinking deeply about it. This is not something like, don't be woke. Like, why are you trying to like wokeify the gay hockey romance? I'm just like, okay, that's a whole different thing.
Wait, hold on.
I'm like, guys.
Are we reading the same source text?
Yeah, like what do you? I got some heinous comments on my videos. I'm like, are you? I don't understand how you're watching two men kiss and you're having this thought at the same time. I just don't understand.
No, literally.
But
I don't get it.
Anyways, yeah, so I just want to like, I guess, debunk this idea that just because it's romance or just because it's, well, I guess very specifically because it's like a gay hockey romance, because it's writing to this like audience, this mass audience, that it can't have messages about the real world, and it can't perpetrate harm in the world. Like, yes, this is a narrative, like an escapist narrative of like, I mean, yeah, the idea of like the two best hockey players in the NHL or in the MLH having a secret decades-long affair. Like, okay, yeah, obviously this isn't super based in reality. But at the same time, we are reading it in the real world, and we are taking away ideas from that text into the real world. When we see like microaggressions in a book, we are going to take that with us, and we're going to take that into the real world. And if we're not actively thinking about that and like, yeah, thinking critically about that and understanding that about a text, then that's when like that's when it becomes really harmful. And so if you dismiss any criticism, like specifically racial criticism of Heated Rivalry and The Long Game and any of the Game Changers books, by saying that it's not that deep, I want to know, like, well, if you think that this isn't that deep, then what kind of thoughts are you already like carrying out in the real world? So
yeah. Fun story. I have written an article literally about this.
I have to read your articles as soon as I get off this call. I'm reading all of them.
That's so nice of you. One of the articles I put out I think it was like 2 years ago at this point. I wrote it with my typical co-author, Mel Stanfill, but then I also wrote it with Megan Condas. It's called Making Fandom Great Again, Silencing Discussions of Racism in Reactionary and Transformative Fandoms. And basically what we did was we went through the don't like, don't read tag on Archive of Our Own, and we pulled all of the comments from those fics and tried to see like what those comments were about and what they were referencing to. And most of the time it was people being like, stop putting stuff about like racism or sexism or whatever in your fics. Like, this is my fun little fan object. I don't come here to think about this kind of stuff. And we compared it to conversations that were happening in what's called Wortham in Action. It is it's a subreddit focused on basically like making comics white again. And we said that the conversations based on like sentiment are the same on Archive of Our Own as they are in this really racist alt-right subreddit, that I was basically like saying, don't make this thing about race because it's my fun little fan object. And so we've talked about this on the podcast before, like critiquing things, even though you love them, is very important. It stops fascism. Like, please learn to critique your media objects. That's very important. So I would like 100% like agree with Ethan's points. But also my other point is there is a book by a man named Edward Said. Edward Said is Palestinian. And he was ousted, him and his family were ousted or removed from Palestine during the 1948 Nakba. And he subsequently lived in like Lebanon and a bunch of other countries and became a theorist. And he has a theory called Orientalism. It's also a book called Orientalism. And basically, while he's writing mostly about like what we would call the Middle East or North Africa from a like United States point of view, or like Southwest Asia. While he's writing with like mostly these cultures in mind, I think it does extend to the cultures of like Southeast Asia, or even like Eastern Asia, Northeast Asia. And basically it's that the Middle East, in his theory, he's saying that the Middle East and Asia are positioned as like antonyms to the West, and that Orientalism is the historical viewpoint that Western societies take on non-Western societies. Effectively, they view them as something that is exotic, different, or less civilized. It's a critical viewpoint which asserts that many academic studies and social viewpoints value and evaluate Western customs and practice as being normal or civilized, and that these non-Western cultures or society are counterposed against it. And so it's important to note that like Orientalism isn't a set of myths. It is an interconnected system of institutions, policies, narratives, and ideas. And I think that this is something that is really impactful when we think about Shane's story, and how even like Ilya is maybe viewed a little bit in certain context, especially as like we talked a little bit last week, Ethan, about Ilya being a refugee, and so like how some of the ways that Ilya is approached as like a refugee can like fall under Orientalism, but that like ultimately what keeps Orientalism flourishing and relevant is its consistent and active traffic between fields. Findings in academia inform foreign and domestic policies. Portrayals in popular culture influence the framing of news about Southwest Asia and North Africa, and vice versa. And there are links between the culture, and like understanding that like there are links, and like understanding like the power and the oppression behind that is like fundamental in understanding the reach of Orientalism. So I just wanted to kind of say, like, if you haven't read Orientalism by Edward Said, please go read it. It also is a very good, like, I think, primer to like the Palestine Israel, like the Israeli genocide of Palestinian people like throughout history. And so that's really interesting. But I think like some of the talk that we have about Orientalism kind of portrays into how we talk about Shane's character, or how Shane's character is seen. So that was my point that I wanted to get into. Do we have anything else that we want to say before we get into Race and Heated Rivalry?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to what Ethan and you said, Lauren, because I am not surprised, Ethan, by what you got from like hateful comments, but at the same time, I like, this has been our position since we created this podcast. Like, we are gonna analyze and criticize this media, but also I don't think people, specifically people that don't have to worry about it, but even the people that do, like you were saying, Ethan, like I just didn't clock it back then, even though like I might have experiences that are similar to the microaggressions that we see in the books. I think we, as a culture in general, in like Western countries, and even like as a generation, maybe, although Ethan is younger than, like, way younger than me, I think. But I think that we didn't learn to clock it because it was not cool to clock it. But I have done, like, due to the series that shall not be named in this or any of our episodes in the future,
forthcoming.
I remember, like, I have done, during the last decade, I have done a lot of like going back to my experience of being a fan of that series and realizing what I had interiorized about like my idea of being a woman. For example, like, there's a lot of comments there about like girls that don't cry are cooler, or girls that go together to the bathroom and laugh are silly. And you get, and that series is like a case study for microaggressions in the creation of characters, of course,
and macroaggressions. Let's be
and
honest.
macroaggression and aggressive aggressiveness.
Aggressive aggressiveness.
So right. Right. And I think I like, if you don't clock it, you do internalize it. So either you are someone who is part of one of those groups being suffering like the violence of those words and the creation of this universe, or you're someone who is in the side of the potential oppressor but you're both interiorizing that idea that
Mhm.
that is like,
Mm-hmm.
where those people belong and how they should behave, be it like a gender issue like I clocked, but also like a race issue. And then when that woman made like these are the schools around the world that are like the
Oh
schools that
Mhm.
you
God. Oh
mentioned in the
God.
series.
Yeah.
The one in Latin America, that was, I think that was one of my wake up calls. Like, I was like,
You
oh,
were like,
so
oh,
that,
the racism really jumped out there.
Mm.
so I was
She let that
like,
loose.
okay, this is interesting. So I always say like, okay, you want to escape this and go to a universe where this doesn't happen, but you want to escape it into a white utopia, or do you want to escape it
Mm.
into like a transracial like utopia where like, yeah, I think it's different. Like, people want one thing when they're like saying like, don't talk about misogyny, don't talk about race, don't talk about oppressions because I'm having fun.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
usually means make this as normative as possible so I
Mhm.
don't have to think. But because the presence of something that is not normative, it's already disturbing to people because we were not raised to think that way. So yeah, that's kind of what I where I go to when I see those comments. Like, you're really either expecting all of us who do not belong to the norm to disappear so you can have
Mhm.
fun, or you're either like falling into the narrative that to be like the right kind of woman, racialized person, etc., you need to pretend that this doesn't affect you, and you need to pretend that this doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Ethan, please say your comment that you just sent in the chat because that's so tea.
Yeah. Well, Lau, while you were speaking, I had the thought of like, for these readers that don't want or that want like this escapist experience, do they want a non-racist world that's non-racist because racism doesn't exist, or because the races other than white don't exist? So what you were saying about a white
Word.
utopia.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And that plays into like the whole like, oh, I don't see color, like I, like I don't
Mhm.
care if somebody's black, I have a black friend or like whatever. And that's just like those are microaggressions on microaggressions on
I don't
microaggressions.
Shout out to my friend Linda from Kenya who did her masters with me. I don't think she will ever listen to this, but
To the
uh,
podcast.
Linda Linda would say to people like in Boston who are doing our master, "Oh, you don't see color? Have you asked a doctor about that? Like, that is not
Oh,
normal."
yeah.
That's not normal.
am. Or my family hits them with the I hate everyone no matter what color they are, if they're pink or purple or brown, and I was like, oh.
Oh, if they're pink or purple. Girl.
Right. Right.
Hello?
But this is why representation matters. Like, exactly, like if
Yeah.
you're still wondering why representation matters, like this is
Wait,
exactly it. And
and it's not just that what representation matters. It's that like valuable, good, well thought
Yes,
out representation matters.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
and this is like illustrates the power of storytelling, because like for white people, a big way for us to have sympathy and empathy with other people that are not white is to read their stories and to have proper representation and then read their stories. That is how
Mhm.
we understand other experiences that are not us, and how we can, I don't know, somehow address this internalized racism and or this outward racism that a lot of people have, not even just white people. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think
For sure.
that's just the power of storytelling, is something to emphasize.
Yeah. I think this leads us really well into kind of our like next part of our conversation, which we're just going to kind of go through all of the parts of Heated Rivalry and analyze for race and racism. So we're going to first start with the books. So obviously Heated Rivalry and The Long Game. I would just like to point out, just because I have the data, the National Hockey League is 83% white and the officials are 90% whites. There are only 35 current black players out of probably like 1,100 players. There are 19 players of Asian descent, 8 players of First Nation or Indigenous descent, 3 Latine players, and 3 Middle Eastern North African players out of 15 or about out of 1,100. So
I was just gonna ask, that you said that's the NHL and not including the PWHL?
That is the NHL.
Okay.
That does not include the PWHL. I don't have those statistics because I'm talking specifically about Shane's story right now. So I really want to focus on the NHL specifically.
That's fair.
So yeah, can do that later on. Okay, so let's talk about Shane's race in the book. So Shane's race in the book, where? Who?
Exactly.
What?
Where?
Where? What? Rachel Reed?
Allegedly.
The alleged race is Japanese.
Oh my god.
Japanese Canadian.
Dead.
Yeah.
The alleged race is.
I was talking to a friend recently about Heated Rivalry. We hadn't spoken about it before, and we were talking about how we love the characters and how we're excited for Unrivaled. And I was like, yeah, like I heard that the date got pushed back because Rachel Reed wants to take more time to like think about like the race issues or the race problems. And my friend goes, "What race issues?" And this was a text conversation. But this person, I won't even get into their identity, but they're not white, and I was very much like, you didn't clock that. So again, reiterates our conversation of it's not always clockable. I was like, was it not glaringly obvious to you that they mentioned once that he's Asian and then never again?
Right.
Yeah. Literally never again.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ethan, go ahead. I have a Unrivaled quote, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, the video that the first ever video I made talking about race, and the one that like went viral, and the one that Hudson liked and Jacob liked.
I didn't know that.
Oh, what? Okay. I thought we knew that. But anyway, I thought that's why I was here.
No. You didn't need the validation.
Oh,
that's really. I didn't know they were noticed like that.
No,
and
yeah.
Listen, Ethan, if you needed validation, Erica's validation was enough.
Erica's validation was enough for me. I was literally like, when we started conceiving of this podcast, like you were the first person that Lau was like, and you need to invite Ethan on the show to talk about this.
And I have in both Lau and Erica, so I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Aw, thank you guys.
So anyway, that reel.
Anyways, that reel that Hudson Williams and Jacob
So that reel, I just made, it was kind of like I had been wanting to make that. I made it, I think after the second episode, or I made it like while the show was still airing. And I posted it, and I was basically like, wow, I'm really glad that Shane's identity is actually visible. Of course visible, because now we're in a visual media, but also like it's part of the script. Like they drew attention to it in episodes 1, in episodes 2, in like all of it. There's discussion, or maybe not discussion, but just like incorporation of Shane's race and his position as an Asian Canadian at the top of his game in a sport that doesn't have many people of color, like the statistics you were saying, Lauren. But I just made that video being like, I'm glad he's Asian in the show because he was not Asian in the books. I said that word for word in the video. I was like, I was actually going back to that casting announcement of like, I was really happy that they casted an Asian person to play Shane, because that's how low the bar was for me. I was like, they're certainly gonna erase his identity. But then they actually cast a Canadian person, like a Asian person, and I was like, that's nice. Like, that's great. I'm glad.
No, like, literally, I mean, it's like a throwaway line in the book. Maybe 1 or 2. Like, it's literally not discussed at all. And like, I have this word for word quote from The Long Game on page 46. It's Ilya and Shane are out with, I think they're at Fabian's like little concert. Possibly. I'm not exactly sure where they might be during this, but it says, Ilya glanced at the end of the table where Shane was sitting. As Ilya had suspected, Shane looked confused and uncomfortable. Hockey had never made Shane sad for a minute of his life. Ilya couldn't pretend to know how it felt to be let down by the game that he loved. Not the way that Max or Ryan had been, but he was more aware of hockey's flaws than Shane was. He'd been paying more attention over the past year to the darker side of this sport.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean? What do you mean Ilya knows how bad? What do you mean? What are you talking about? You're telling me the Asian player, he never experienced racism. He's never been disillusioned by the NHL or the MLH or whatever we call it. You're telling me he's never been disappointed in that organization?
Ever?
Oh my god.
Right. And like Rachel for her writing notes having like Shane doesn't feel trauma. And I was just like,
oh my god.
Yeah.
Half Asian man doesn't feel trauma. Like, girl, come on,
Because
please.
listen, it would be so interesting if Shane was just pretending not to notice because of how a lot of immigrant children learn not to point out all of these things, and you try to assimilate and you try to pass, and that would have been very interesting to see in that character, you know, like him being like, this isn't like we see in the show when he's asked about like his shared struggles with Serena Williams and Tiger Woods, and he's like, I don't want to think about that. I only think about the sport. That makes sense because that is like probably something he learned to do from a very early age. So he wasn't like treated as this quote unquote like whiny player that wants like that wants to like become the victim and be too woke. And this is not an environment that is welcoming of any of these thoughts. So that would make sense to me. But the fact that Ilya, who actually knows him, you know, like he will clock, like our Ilya Rosanov will clock if Shane knew this. So the fact that Rachel really wrote Shane as like oblivious to all of this offends me.
It's
So-
offensive.
Yeah.
It's offensive. Like, that's what it is. It's like, like, you really don't care about any other perspective than a white perspective. Like, you have never been forced to think outside of that perspective ever in your life, or like to think about how your actions like implicate. And like, I think there is like, I know that like Rick Riordan in the past has like come out and said like, when I wrote Percy Jackson, like, we did not talk about race like largely the way that we do today. Like, the dissemination of information on the internet has like helped that a lot, and that like a lot of my understandings about race and like perspectives beyond my own were not included in those books. But like, Rachel, girl, you wrote this book in 2018. Like,
right.
times weren't that different, babe. Like, not that different, okay? Which then makes me question that, like, oh, she thinks it's just a stupid little romance novel.
Right.
Like, that's what it feels like to me. Like, she's like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's just a dumb little romance novel.
Yeah. I think what really gets me too about like you said, Lau, having Shane be, especially as like a mixed race person, and we don't know how white passing Shane is in the books either. So it could have been something to be like, you have this potentially white passing Asian person in the hockey league. Maybe he's just ignoring that he's Asian because he doesn't want to think about it. He wants to pretend that he's white, that he shares the same privileges, that he's not like privy to the discrimination that he might like hear in the locker room or like whatever else. You know, he wants to exclude himself from that and be included in the dominant group. Like, that would be an interesting thing to explore, but it's simply not explored. But and what makes it worse for me is that Rachel Reed does write about oppression in her books. Like, the whole plot of The Long Game is Shane and Ilya being scared of being outed because that will have very real consequences. So I went and pulled up, I actually just bought The Long Game and Heated Rivalry today. So I actually have the copies, which is but on page 185 of The Long Game, this is like during the scene where Shane is being confronted by the commissioner. The commissioner says, I know that historically hockey hasn't been the most inclusive sport, but obviously anyone can make it to the very top if they work hard enough. I mean, you're proof of that. Shane wasn't sure if Crowell was referring to his rumored homosexuality, his Japanese heritage, or both. That is one of two mentions of the word Japanese in The Long Game. And I'm like, clearly you have some knowledge. Shane has some knowledge, and the author has some knowledge that being Japanese would impact his game and would impact how he moves through the NHL the same way that being gay would impact how he moves through the NHL.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
And
why
so
do we have the gay part on the page, but not the race part?
That is the question, Ethan, because we see like what you and I were like saying, like it would be one thing if Shane was going through like, I'm ignoring this part of my identity
Mm-hmm.
because
Mhm.
I need to survive and that's how I learned to survive. Because that is what we see with his gay part. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
the way
Yes.
he's deluluing himself into heterosexuality is crazy.
Yes.
Why don't we see that with the race part? Like really, like the blueprint is there to
Mm-hmm.
understand how Shane thinks and how Shane builds a narrative to lie to himself in order to be more acceptable and palatable to the public. Why don't we have the other elephant in the room of
Mm-hmm.
being in hockey being Shane Hollander in that internal monologue and in that narrative that he's building? Where is
Mhm.
that? Like it's
Right.
completely absent. And as Ethan was saying, like what makes it weirder and more upsetting is the fact that we are talking about oppression in these books. We're just
Mhm.
not talking about this aspect of oppression, which is shady and I don't like it.
Right. And like Shane's race plays into like so many of his
Uh-huh.
fears about being outed because like if we think about
Yep.
the way that like Asian men are portrayed, they're like very emasculated, right?
Yeah.
And like like his fear about being outed also stems from how his race is like
Hmm.
portrayed and people interact with that. Like Asian women have always been seen as like over sexualized or viewed as like very young and like very like little girl like in a way more disgusting realm of places that we don't even have to get into. But like so much of Shane's like anxiety regarding this issue is because it's not only that he would be different because he's gay, but it's also because he would be different because he's gay and Asian. And so yeah, I think like the book, I mean obviously like the books don't touch on it at all and it's just like and I think the other thing that I want to say about this is like I think this is an overarching point like overall is that and I think it will segue us into talking about the TV show is that Shane like a lot of times people expect characters to talk about their racial identities because they are being oppressed in some way shape or form or that is the only time that characters talk about their racial identities is because they are being oppressed is because they're experiencing racism and like I don't think that's what Shane's story should be at all like I want to know about like Yuna is so close like as an immigrant like she is so close to like traditional Japanese culture. Like, I want to know how that was like a part of Shane's life growing up, or whether it was not. Like, does he have like special Japanese food that he likes to cook? Does he
Do
has he
they
learned
speak
Japanese?
Japanese?
Yeah, do
We
they
have
speak
no
Japanese
idea if they speak
at
Japanese.
home? Like, you know, like all of these things, like that we just don't get at all either, you know? And so I think it is not only that we should have like when we hear about it in the show, it is always in regards, like when we hear about Shane's race, it's always in regards to some kind of negative thing. Like
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
it's the Metro's guy being the Metro's GM being like, oh, well, like we don't even care that he's Asian Canadian. It's Rose talking about the other
Model minority.
kid, like the
Yeah.
other minority in like the other Asian minority in Shane's like hockey camp, like who had a different, like a non-Western last name. Like it encompasses a show, but it's only talked about negatively.
I was gonna say something about Lauren when you were saying like Shane does Shane like interact with his Japanese identity at home? Does he
Mm-hmm.
have foods? Does he speak the language? All of this stuff. And if not, then we need a reason for that too. Like
Exactly.
should we,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I actually am not even asking I mean maybe we can talk about Unrivaled later,
We
but
will talk
I
about
don't
Unrivaled.
even
It's on
Yeah.
there.
I'm not even wanting like from Heated Rivalry from the long game. I'm not even wanting more like Japanese things on the page.
Yes.
I just want him to think about his race a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I don't want it to be
Yeah.
like because then it'll like fall into like it can fall into stereotypes and fetishization.
He will eat sushi every night,
Fetishizations
you
of
know?
Yeah.
yeah, it's like
Right.
okay, then we're gonna get into that, which is also
Yeah.
not good. So
Right.
it's like
And like
I
the
don't want
pandering.
these, yeah, I don't want these like superficial references to race. I want the way that a character of a person of color
Mhm.
would think about race. I want to see a little bit of that in a book, because I understand these are books, like you can't capture an entire experience in a book, but you can capture a little bit of it. That's why we read, to like get windows into other people's experiences and lives. You can capture a little bit in a book. So I'd like his race to be a part of that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, like, I think like a great point to include it would have been if she talked about COVID at all, but she didn't talk about COVID at all.
Nope.
Because like we know that like Asian people are facing like insanely high rates of anti-Asian like rhetoric right now because of COVID. And so like that could be like an in point for Rachel Reed to talk in Unrivaled about it, but she didn't even fucking put COVID in her books, which I mean is a whole nother thing that I've also written on. But
yeah,
like I totally get what you're saying, Ethan.
Even just like talking, like pointing out at the fact that being Japanese versus being Vietnamese or Chinese will put Yuna at like a different level in the eyes of these Canadians, because Japanese are like the in the minds of the West, they're the elite, like they're the superior culture of this area of the world. And so how does that play into it? Is that why Shane is accessing a different treatment or something like that? Like,
right, exactly.
As Ethan was saying, like, if so, then why? I need more about it, and I need to understand what is going on.
Yeah, and one of Ethan's reels that I'm sure we'll get into when we talk more about the show is, but I really wanted to bring up in our conversation today, is also when Ilya is having, like we said, where he, and I know we'll talk about the show, but when Ilya says, I know your mother's Japanese or something, Ethan, you said that Hudson as Shane could have said, actually, I'm Korean, and I will let you extrapolate on that in a minute. But I also, while we were talking about Ilya a minute ago, I wanted to bring up that we know that Rachel can write about how a race or an ethnicity is important to a character for their background because of Ilya. Like, that's his whole thing.
Yeah.
And I know that Ilya is white passing. Like, if you don't hear him speak through the accent, like, you don't initially know that he's Russian or that he is this other identity or this non-American or non-Canadian, I guess. But we know that she knows that a person's like place of origin or a person's culture, a person's background can have ramifications to, like, as an identity, ramifications in their lives as an other. And so, like, through Ilya, that's his whole part of his whole thing and why he can't come out. And like, for me, for in this conversation to say that, like, her like jumping through these hoops to kind of ignore Shane's identity, I'm like, you don't have to. You already did it through Ilya, so why can't you also do it through Shane? Which just also pisses me off, Lauren.
Right. And I think there's also a privileging within these cultures themselves of like Shane and Ilya's differing identities, because most of Russia is directly over China. So that means a lot of the people in Russia beyond those very small Western like cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg are or look more like Asian people, right? And so Ilya is also being privileged through colorism and racism in some shape or form. And I mean, so is Shane. Like, he is, you know, as adjacent to whiteness as he can be as an Asian person, right? Like, I've seen people say before, like, white passing, but he's not white passing because he's Asian. But, you know, basically he is, you know, he has that, like, there is that colorism.
And, yeah, Amanda,
kind of
what you were saying about,
as well to talk about,
like, Ilya, his identity being fully explored as a Slavic person, as a Russian person. And also, like, that kind of leads into my reel that I made about that one line of dialogue of, like, all I know about your mother is she's Japanese or something. Because most of the comments that I got, other than like the flat out like hate comments, the comments that were trying to engage with what I was saying, but were like kind of missing the point, those comments were like, no, as a Slavic person, Ilya would say that. As a Russian person, Ilya would say that. Because in Russian culture, this is how we talk about race. Or like, he's trying, you know, he's trying to not let on that he knows about Shane. So that's why it's worded that way. And just people making I mean, they're not really excuses because they are reasons. I can believe that this line of dialogue would be said by a real person who doesn't mean harm. But that's how microaggressions are. They're not done intentionally. They're done because you say them through your frame of reference, whether that's Slavic culture, Russian culture, white culture, just whatever it is. Like, you say that because you grew up with a set of experiences that makes it okay for you to say that to yourself. You're like, I'm going to say this and I don't think it's bad because I don't have the frame of reference to believe that it's bad. That doesn't make it not bad, though. Like, if you say something bad but you don't believe it's bad, that doesn't change the fact that it's still bad.
Right.
Well, to me, using Ilya's Russianness to defend this particular line of dialogue, I was like, why are you so willing to let Ilya's identity shine through in this scene that is supposed to be about Shane's identity?
Yep.
It's supposed to be, again, like one of two mentions. Actually, it's one of two mentions in Heated Rivalry and then one of two in the long game. It's like just so few. But in Heated Rivalry, this is like the second time we get the word Japanese in the book. And you're willing to let Ilya's character be the one that like gets this scene. Like, you want to protect his characterization in this scene. You don't want to protect Shane's. Like, you don't want to make Shane be like, wait, that kind of felt weird. Or I don't know. Again, it could be something interesting if Shane himself doesn't clock that it's a microaggression, because that again feeds into how he's growing up and how he's internalized his race. I just know that's not what's happening here. I know that's not what's happening here. So
and also, like, I have seen a decent amount of criticism about Ilya's Russianness and how that's even portrayed, his like ethnicity, because everybody's like, oh, well, he's kind of like the stereotype of Russia, like brooding, like, you know, has the horrible dad, drinks a lot of vodka, you know, like drives fast cars, like he's a Slavic fuckboy, you know? And so I've seen the argument even made that like Ilya's ethnicity is not really even that delved into, especially as someone who is an immigrant. So like, I think there is just a lot to this. Like, there are a lot of things, there are a lot of moving parts that Rachel Reed, I don't think, considered really truly when she was writing this novel. I do want to shift to talking about the show, because I think we have kind of identified that there are more, they maybe do a little bit of a better job, like the casting. I'm like also, like you had said, Ethan, like I was surprised that they kept Shane's casting as an Asian man, and that like Hudson was also like half Asian. Like, there is more just a portrayal of POC characters. Like, is JJ Black in the books? Is he Haitian?
He is.
I think so. Yeah.
He
Okay.
is.
Lau is our resident JJ expert because Lau loves JJ. So
he's great. Yeah.
I love Haiti. So that was like, as soon as I read that, I was like, yes!
Yes. But Svetlana is notably not her white, blonde, Russian counterpart as she is in the books. She's a person of color in the TV, or her actress is a person of color in the TV show. And we love Ksenia, like, down bad.
She's a Fleet fan, by the way. Shout out to the Fleet, Boston Fleet.
Yeah, I saw those clips too. Oh my god.
I was like, I need to go be a lesbian at a PWHL game with her
At a
right
Fleet
now.
game specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Boston fan
meow.
now.
Right, meow.
Okay, millennial.
Anyways, sorry. Okay, so let's talk about the show. Do we think they did a better job?
I mean, the bar was literally...
Yeah. Exactly. Like, yes, because how could you not?
How could you not? The bar was in hell.
Yeah.
It was like the 9th circle of hell. My daily Dante reference for you. And the bar was there. So it was really hard to not improve that.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have made it worse.
They could have made him white. So
Exactly.
they didn't do that.
They could have made it worse.
Yeah. White men have disappointed me in the past, so thank you,
And they
Jacob
continue
Turney,
to do
for
so every day.
not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah. Definitely the show is better. But I think like what really surprised me, I think one of my favorite scenes in the show is the interview that Shane gives in French to like that person. And I feel like that went over a lot of people's heads, but it did not go over mine. I was watching that and I was like, this is great. Because that's what it, like, that scene is where I saw the possible characterization of Shane as someone who doesn't want to think about his race.
Exactly.
Like, he is getting this question about Tiger Woods and Serena Williams, two very prominent Black athletes, like top of their games. And he's like, no, I don't think about myself in that way. And I love how, like, it's very layered in a lot of different ways, because it's like, number one, Shane doesn't want to think about race. Number two, Shane is not Black. He doesn't occupy the same space that those two other athletes occupy.
Yeah.
He's not facing the same challenges that Tiger Woods and Serena Williams face. He's facing an entirely different experience because he's not Black and he's half white. So,
and he doesn't live in the US.
And he doesn't live in the US. Yeah. Like, I like that scene a lot because it has those layers. And also, like, the third layer is, like, Shane wants to just talk about hockey. Like, he's here for just hockey only, like, past the other two reasons for why he might be uncomfortable with this question. I like that scene a lot for those layers.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I clocked it. Again, it's about, like, clocking these things. Like, I clocked it, but I feel like I saw a real, or I would see, like, edits with this scene being like, oh, he's in his rookie season, he's already being compared to Tiger Woods and Serena Williams. He's just that good. And I'm like, no, that's not why he's being compared to Tiger Woods and Serena Williams.
Also, Serena Williams is the GOAT.
Yeah.
Like, if you're making those comparisons, it feels like kind of random. Like, why? Also, Tiger Woods, kind of a piece of shit person. Why would you compare Shane?
We have to think, like, during 2011, Tiger Woods was kind of like...
But then why not pull, like, other rookies? Like, why not?
Yeah,
like,
why not
make
pull
those comparisons?
Or, like, didn't they referenced a real life hockey player at one point, right? Yuna was saying, like, oh, this guy, or no, was that just like, that was like in the French subtitle of I'm in too deep. Guys, I'm in too deep. But I think, like, the French subtitling, like, translated something that Yuna said as, like, referencing a specific player.
We eventually do need to make an episode about the awful subtitling in HBO in many different languages. Because me and my students are studying this in the translation emphasis, because a lot of them are watching shows on HBO and watching Heated Rivalry, and we are complaining about it. I agree with you, Ethan. I did clock it, and to me it was like, this white reporter. This is the equivalent of asking a woman athlete about their hair routine. You know, like, of course you're asking this because you did not do your homework. You're not asking about all the other stuff of a rookie season. You're just like, are you facing the racism, TM?
The racism, TM? Is it something you're going through? Have you talked to your doctor? The racism?
And I'm gonna think about the only two racialized athletes that I can name, because they didn't leave me another option than to know them. You know, like, they were so good in their games that I need to know about them. But it's like, basically, name a woman. Like, name a racialized athlete that is not the Williams sisters and Tiger Woods. Please.
Name a Black person. Can you do it?
Name a Black person. Yeah. So it was very layered. And it made sense because he would get that in real life. Like, that is what people of color, women, queer people get when they are famous. Those are the stupid questions that they have to face.
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, people don't clock it because then Ilya's like, oh, you're so perfect, you're speaking French, and people are not rehearing this enough.
Yeah.
You need to redo your homework, listeners.
I don't think it's even that people are not reheating this enough. I think it's just that people don't have media literacy, which is once again the soapbox I get on every episode of this podcast.
As we have mentioned in the past,
y'all don't read enough anymore, and you don't read things that will challenge you. You just read to, like, have pseudo intellectualism. But anyways. Anyways, I think this is a good segue into talking about the fandom, and then I think we'll come back and talk about like the future and the casting and stuff for season 2. Because I mean, Ethan, you are like literally talking about how Heated Rivalry fandom comes and attacks you for talking about race. There's currently an issue going on right now in the Heated Rivalry fandom where Jacob and Rachel Reed made some microaggressions against Hudson yesterday at BookCon, I think, on a panel. And there is once again this is now like the third or fourth time we've had to talk about race in this fandom. And for some reason, it's still not clocking to people. Like anything. Like I'm still fighting with people on threads. Like all I do is copy and paste. Like you cannot tell people of color how to respond to microaggressions or racism.
Yeah.
Like as a white person, you can't do that.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'll go one step further and say, even if you are a person of color, just because you don't take offense to something or you don't realize that something is offensive, that doesn't make it not offensive. Because again, like in the comments of my videos, I got a few people who were like, I'm Asian and I don't care. Like, that's fine. And I'm like, okay, I'm Asian and I do care. So now what? So now what? Like
that happens so much. Like people, like Colombian people will be like, I don't mind when US people say write it Colombia. I don't get offended by that. And I'm like, good for you. Do you want a gold star for being like the perfect little friend of the white empire or what? And I'm like, you're not. And this is something we said at the beginning, like in one of our first episodes, like just because you are queer doesn't mean that you get to hold the narrative of what being queer is, of what other queer people might feel with this representation. You need to enter the conversation because we're not a monolith. Like Asian people are not a monolith. People are going to feel different about stuff. That doesn't mean that your point, Ethan, is not valid because someone who came from somewhere else in Asia does not agree. Like that is what makes the conversation interesting, is that we have different perspectives of it. Not that, oh, I vouch for the Asians of the world and saying this is not a microaggression.
Yeah, I think I'm not exactly sure what was said about like that was a microaggression towards Hudson.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know what was said.
I don't know. However, I do know that it was like specifically a racial microaggression, which like I found this like thread on Threads from Pedro Paro 2, and they said like a lot of people, they're talking kind of overall about like the master thread of every bad argument, like referencing the Heated Rivalry book conflub, and they said people will be like, this is chirping, this is just affection. So Pedro Paro says, I get it, but we're looking at impact here, not intent. Their impact was that they used racially charged, demeaning language to joke about someone who was not there as his boss in a professional setting in front of a very white crowd during a very white event. After all of those months of neglecting to answer or address the racialized harm thrown at the same actor that chased him off of the web, actively downplaying it whenever the question was raised. I have Black and brown friends who, this is the person speaking, who I make depreciating comments to as a show of affection. But I am not going to go up on stage during one of the biggest creative events of the year and in the capacity of being someone's boss, call my brown friends stupid because we like to roast each other in the group chat. This isn't a group chat. You are representing them. And when you are representing an off, disrespected, marginalized person to a biased public, it is your job to model treating them with respect.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was everything. Like, come on, y'all.
And I think that this, if we can go back to like Rick Riordan and stuff, like I think that with the adaptation of the Percy Jackson TV series, like him going to bat for the kids that have faced a lot of hate, which is a whole separate discussion in and of itself, but like not making jokes. I mean, and I get that these are kids, so it is a different discussion, but it's still like there's a discussion happening there, but like you will not say anything about the race. You will not make any sort of comments. Like the mouse will get you if you say something like that. Like I think that bringing up even the professional capacity, like, yeah, you can joke around about like whatever someone's personality and stuff, but as soon as you bring their identity into it, I think that that is crossing a line and a boundary. And I think that the Percy Jackson adaptation has set some good examples of this, of how everyone on the cast and crew and behind the scenes and everyone who works on that show will fight like hell for these kids. And that
they're
has
not
been
kids, they're you're talking about Percy Jackson. I was like, no, these are adults.
I know, I'm being super clear, but that's kind of the example I'm using of the, like, these people will fight for these people that are facing hate and facing like struggle, like real life struggle, due to this work and due to their portrayal in this show. And the fact that even though, like I said, they're adults in Heated Rivalry, it's, you should still go to bat for your colleagues. If they're your friends, you should still be sticking up for them and not giving into it, because now that people can use that as an excuse of like, oh, well, it's just chirping, like I can make fun of Hudson because it's just chirping. Okay, you just fed the parasocialism, like it's
right.
It's
and people are also pointing out that this is not an isolated incident. This is like routinely how Jacob and Rachel speak about Hudson. Like, and so it's symptomatic of a larger problem.
Yeah. And again, even if that's how they are treating or like not treating, but like if they have that kind of relationship with Hudson, again, like, yeah, I joke with my friends all the time. Like you're friends with people, you know, when you know someone, you know what they're okay and not okay with. And you can have that conversation. Like if you say something that they don't like, you have that conversation right then and there because you have a personal relationship to them. But what's different with like BookCon, again, like this professional thing of like Hudson's not there and you're on stage and you're recording this, like this is going out to people who have no relationship with you guys, who if they start saying this stuff about Hudson can't come up and like be like, don't say that about me, because he doesn't know you. Like you're gonna be perpetuating that harm, and he's just not gonna be there to say that this is wrong. Like you're just gonna internalize that and you won't have any pushback.
Right. And in a fandom where, as I've mentioned, we've already had issues of racism, like multiple times, like Hudson getting overtly racist comments on Instagram, on websites, the statements that he and Francois had put out that also started a very big chat in fandom about like how Hudson wasn't being defended by his like white coworkers and they were not speaking up for him, and it felt like Hudson was having to take the initiative as a person of color to speak up for himself about racism, which was a whole nother side to things. I think like we really need Jacob and Rachel to come out and say this is not okay, make that address, and stop with these microaggressions. Ethan, I know you want to jump in with some thoughts about like microaggressions, but then also like Jacob defending, not defending, things like that. So go for it. Take it away.
Yeah. About Jacob defending or not defending in this situation, we've seen him defend them because that there was that interview where the interviewer asked about their sexualities and Jacob immediately stepped in and was like, we're not answering that question. We don't need to discuss this. So clearly, again, capable, you know, he's been around in the industry for a while. He knows how this works. It's an if he wanted to he would situation. And it's like, why are Hudson and Francois the ones doing this? Like, why is there's no management involved? What's going on here?
There's more from this thread that I would love to read, like, because I think Jacob Tierney kind of falls along this like, oh, stop, like you're making like this community so divisive. Like that's how it feels, like this language that he constantly kind of continues to use. And Pedro Parro writes like, this is an indication of whose perspective you see as the default, because you know who demonstrably and statistically has to walk on eggshells in the workplace lest they be socially punished way more: marginalized people. Explicitisms and microaggression are reported to be one of the leading causes of workplace burnout and people quitting their jobs. And not being able to find racialized workers who fit within the workplace culture is one of the leading reasons why majority white workplaces often fail diversity audits. White people feeling like they have to walk on eggshells cost racialized people their mental health and their jobs. But it's for some reason the white people who are the victims here. It's the white people who we are making unreasonable requests of and whose discomfort is being prioritized. And so I think this also comes off in the way that Rachel and Jacob kind of talk about Hudson and his race. So yeah. So I think one of the last things I kind of want to talk about in this, like in fandom, is that I have seen all over threads like Black, brown, indigenous folks like openly discussing that they don't participate in Heated Rivalry fandom online anymore. That they like read the fics and like consume the TV show and don't like look at anything else. And like I have seen so many people online be like, Hudson is like the main reason why I feel like I'm so drawn to this, because I love him as a person and I love him as an actor, and he has given Shane so much characterization that Shane doesn't have. Like Hudson has built that character. And so like the reasons why I am returning to this fandom over and over again is because I love him and I love what he's done. And so, but I feel like that the fandom is openly hostile to people of color. And I've felt that too. Like when Hudson and Francois had like put out their statements like a couple of months ago, I was on threads and like one night it was all about racism, and the next morning I got on, and I'm sure this is some of my algorithm, but everybody was back to like cottage posting like, oh my god, I just did a repeat, like look at this. And I was like, wait, are we just like, what is going on? Like something horrible just happened and you guys are just flipping the script? Like no problem. What is going on? So I don't know, what are y'all's thoughts kind of there?
I think that this goes back to a lot of what we've been talking about. Like we've seen this reiterated in other facets, like through Ethan's comments, where people are like, why are you putting racism into my fandom object? Like why are you being woke? And I think that that's so intrinsically tied of the like a lot of the fandom won't recognize that and like actively refuses it, and then therefore will not engage with like fans of color and like people who are like, oh, I have this experience or I relate to Shane this way, and like this is cycle just keeps perpetuating itself. And I think that those things are so intrinsically tied, and that's why this keeps happening, is because people don't have critical thinking skills, like we've been saying, and won't listen to other fans, and then you just get discourse. Because I feel like also people get in this head, they're like, oh, internet fight, discourse, and have no application to a real world setting, or like they don't understand that while there are lots of bots, there are real people on the other side of this who are seeing what you're saying, who are seeing like these thoughts, and are just like, I also think people are disengaging because it's like, I don't want to see you arguing over my identity. I don't want to see you arguing over my body. Like this has already happened so much in politics in the real world, and to have this happen in fandom, I feel like can be disheartening, where it's like, not to say that you can't have discourse about race, but I'm saying that where people are anti being woke, I guess is what I'd call it. And they'd say like, if you can't be woke for this fandom, you can't be woke for me, and therefore I won't participate in this community with you. That's some of my first initial thoughts that are rambling about that.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. Before we were recording, I was talking about how I'm on embargo, which means that my friends all know that I don't want to see pictures, I don't want to see posts, I don't want to see anything about Heated Rivalry. And in the beginning, that was because of like the obsession was just too much. I was like, I need to like control myself and not have this in my face 24/7. But it slowly evolved, like once all the discourse started, and like once I started posting critical videos and like getting like hate comments, or like just I don't know, calling them hate I don't know, weird comments, bad comments I didn't like to see in my inbox, then I was like, okay, I'm kind of like, it's not fun to be in this fandom anymore. It's not fun to like talk about this book with people because I have no idea what kind of people they actually are. I thought we all, loved these characters and wanted to create a space where we could love these characters and like all feel welcome. I thought we could create like an actual fandom, but that quickly devolved. Yeah. But I think like because the books are so microaggressive and the show is an improvement, but there's still work to be done. And then on top of that, like the in real life response to Hudson, it's just very weird to be in a fandom that, or like to read fan fiction and to be like, they're writing about Shane the way that Rachel Reed is writing about Shane, which is technically in a fandom, that's something that you want, right? You're like, oh, this book is so good, I feel like the original author wrote it, or this fic is so good, I feel like the original author wrote it. That's typically a compliment, but in Heated Rivalry's case, it doesn't feel that way. Like I'm reading something and I'm like, now I'm worried about this author and like what they think about people of color and how
Yeah.
they've internalized this book and how they've internalized Shane's character. On the flip side, there are some really beautiful fics that people have written that actually explore Shane's experience being like Asian
Yeah.
Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
So there's even like, I'll shout out this like artist as soon as I remember their actual URL. But there's this one, not URL. Wow, the Tumblr really jumped out.
Wow.
The Tumblr
Yeah.
really jumped
Oh
out
my
there.
god, guys, my first fans were all on Tumblr. Yeah.
No, real. Ethan, what were they? Tell us.
Percy Jackson, like.
And you know what? And you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real.
But this fan artist, Haydrolix, made this beautiful fan comic called Stick Handling
Mhm.
that it's just beautiful. It's on Instagram and it's about like Shane using chopsticks and Ilya being like, I want to learn how to use chopsticks from you. And then Shane kind of going into his history of like learning how to use chopsticks and like like that, just that very small piece of his identity. And I was like, this is beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not very long. But I don't want to spoil it, but there's like this beautiful parallel. It's called stick handling, right? There's a beautiful parallel between chopsticks and hockey sticks.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
It's just really, it's really great.
And you will be giving us the link so we can share it with our listeners
Of
and also read it
course.
ourselves.
Of course I will be
And
doing
also with
that.
ourselves, yeah.
And also read it ourselves.
Yes. That is for me, thank you.
Most
Yeah.
importantly. No, and I think that is one place that the fic is really great. I've read a lot of really great fics where Shane interacts with being Asian, being Japanese. I mean, some of them have been Yakuza fics, you know, which is a whole other side of fandom that we don't need to get into right now. But I think there is a desire in some of the fandom at least to have more meaningful representation.
Mhm.
I think this also points us really well to looking at the future kind of, and I think I want to call back to like something that you said, Ethan, earlier about like you don't want it to feel like Rachel Reed as she takes on Unrivaled, because she has said that she is going to take some time to address kind of the race issues that she has not addressed for 2 books in Unrivaled, and that's one of the reasons why it got pushed back. Like what you said, Ethan, like I don't want to see it like very stereotyped or like pandering in some way, shape, or form to further describe Shane's race, because I think, like, also this is a hypothesis that I've had in the past, but like if he's more like exposed to his race or talks about his race in Unrivaled, but there's no movement made by Rachel Reed or Jacob Tierney to better protect Hudson from racism in fandom, then don't include it, because we see how much hate Hudson is already getting for just being like visibly Asian and a few throwaway lines, right? Like I always have said, and I've said before on this podcast, that like uneducated allies are almost as detrimental to movements as like the opposite side that of whatever like you are fighting for, because like if we all of a sudden go and we give like Shane all of this like Asian backgrounding and people are like, oh my god, the representation's there, but we don't do all of the work on the other side of it, it's pointless, right? Like it doesn't improve anything, it doesn't stop the racism, it needs to have some kind of substance behind it. And so I think that's one of the things that I really hope for the future. I don't think Rachel Reed can be trusted to do that, and I don't think Jacob Tierney can be trusted either, unfortunately.
Yeah, I kind of have similar thoughts about Unrivaled and how race will be addressed in Unrivaled, because I kind of don't want to see I'm like, anything she includes now is going to feel like pandering to me. If it's not like the most tasteful, the most sensitive representation of like the Japanese Canadian experience, it's just gonna feel so shoehorned and like she did it because she got backlash.
Right.
Like And like you said, representation from uneducated allies, if it's bad representation, I don't want it.
Mhm.
Like I would honestly rather, well, I mean, now you can't make Shane white, but
Right.
you can't do that now. But I mean, like in general, I think like if you are an author, an artist, a creator of any kind, and you don't take like the time to really research the like ethnicity that you are trying to portray, if it's an ethnicity outside of your own, or like any kind of experience outside of your own, if you're just doing it because like I don't know, you like the aesthetic or whatever reason you might have for including a character from a different background than yours, then it's like I would rather you just write characters that share your experience. I would
Yeah.
rather like no, I feel like there's I feel like this is just an ongoing conversation in the book community in general of like
Mhm.
writing outside of what you know, like do I stick to do I like or I'm thinking of this quote actually by R.F. Kuang, who's the author of Babel and Yellowface, and who's like an
Mhm.
academic
Mhm.
in her own right. But she is very pro writing outside of your own experience because
Mhm.
she, like, I don't want to misquote her, but she was saying, like, if we limit ourselves and we limit the kinds of stories that we tell, then, like, what even is the point of storytelling? If we're just telling, like,
Mhm.
our own lived
Mhm.
experience, then what is the point of writing fiction? Which I
Mm.
do see on the one hand, but on the other hand, when there is like bad, I'll speak just for myself. Like when there is bad Indian representation or harmful Indian representation in like a book that's just unaddressed, people like internalize that. You
Mhm.
see like representation is critical. Representation of
Yeah.
experiences other than our own is critical to how we view the world, which I feel like we've been saying this whole time.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
it's like how we experience other people's lives. So if we experience them in a way that's not accurate to how those lives are lived,
Mhm.
then I
Yeah.
don't like I would rather it's just not included at all. Like if I'm going to
Right.
walk in someone's shoes, I want them to fit them, you know?
Mm.
So,
Yeah, and I think it's not that it's not possible as like as we were saying with like what is the point of storytelling? It's just that it requires the acknowledgement of responsibility. You know, like
mm,
you need
Mhm.
to know that if you do this, you need to do it well. And there's a lot of stake at stake. And
mhm.
I I also don't think that we can trust Rachel. I still want to be surprised and to be proven wrong, at least by the show crew. Because fortunately, like even if I say like after this month trusting Jacob, it's not something that is happening in my brain. I you will hope that someone else involved in production, at least in what it's like in what touches the way the story is told, would make it better. I'm like, why aren't we like normalizing getting sensitivity readers? Why aren't we
Mm.
like reaching out to people?
Mhm.
Like just acknowledge that you don't know about it, but that you want to learn because you do see the importance in representation. And acknowledge that you might have blind spots that you're
Mhm.
completely
Mhm.
not touching because you don't know they're there. And
Mm.
of course, this goes beyond that because I don't think that you can, in this day and age, being an educated person, like not think about maybe, like, you might not know what would be the best way to address certain points,
Mhm.
but you should be able to notice that you're missing that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I blamed Rachel and I blamed the editors. Like, how do you
Mhm.
go through all
Yeah.
of that and nobody said like, and we know how because I know the publishing industry is not great. But I'm like, okay, now that there's backlash, I don't want pandering. I want you to do the
Mhm.
Yeah.
work. I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
someone who knows about this to be involved. Like, we have the excellent, we're praising Rick Riordan.
Cishet white guy though.
Yeah. And as Erica and Carter in Seaweed Brain podcasts have discussed so many times, the inclusion of Marco Shiro to write the Nico series, That was
Mm.
clever.
Mm-hmm.
That gave so much depth to the queer marginalized identity of Nico, and to this whole discourse about the hierarchization of this universe and how we consider some lives more worthy than the others. And that's how you do this. You use community as a way to learn and to do better by
Mm-hmm.
your readers and your viewers. And I was actually talking about this with my students today. My students are starting the translation emphasis in the program. Some of them are like, okay, so how can I tell what should I translate and what I shouldn't? And I was like, you like, the idea of this emphasis is for you to like develop some principles. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that I won't translate a Zionist pamphlet because I don't want that out there. I don't
Right.
agree with it.
Yeah.
But also, there are things that I agree with that I want out there that I won't translate because it's not my place to do it, because there's stuff I'm going to miss. There's stuff
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to understand properly. And if I was forced to translate certain things because of lack of resources in some situation, I would want a team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I bring the linguistic knowledge, but I need someone else to bring the other knowledge because I know I'm lacking it. So
Mm-hmm.
that was something we discussed today. And I think for writing, like, we imagine writing as this very individual and solitary work, and
Right.
it isn't. You need
Right.
to write in community. You need to be in constant conversation with peers that are not exactly like yourself, because
Right.
you need someone to point
Mm-hmm.
out, like, this makes no sense.
And notably, I was just looking through the Heated Rivalry IMDb. There's
Mm.
no, like, they have one person of color on like their main production
Mm.
staff, and it's all white writers and it's
Yippee!
all white production.
Yippee!
And so I think
Good for
that is,
you.
that also makes me scared when we think about season 2, because there
Mm.
are more characters of color in season 2. It's
Mm-hmm.
been confirmed that season 2 covers both Game Changers and the long game. And if that is true, then we'll get people like Fabian Salah, and like even Bood
Um,
is
you
Boots.
said long game, and you said game changers and long game. I think you meant
Oh, role model in long game, or
yeah,
role model in long game.
yeah.
Bood is a person of color, I'm pretty sure.
Mm.
Boodram from
Yeah.
I
long
think so.
game.
Which I didn't clock, by the way. The amount of times I would read like through a Game Changers book and be like, wait a minute, that was a person of color this whole time.
No, literally, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it just makes me nervous about casting and the way that they're going to address race and things in the future, which I think we've definitely admitted to.
Yeah, I think they still keep like a lot of undiscovered talent and like not unknown people. I think that is where they will find strength in this. Like I know Heated Rivalry has really like exploded and like just
Mm.
almost everyone knows about it. It feels like, but I don't think that gives them an excuse to start putting like stars in it. I think this is a great opportunity to cast like young, just like Hudson and Connor, like people who were
Mm.
just like working so hard and just on the verge of giving up, and then breaking out like this. I think utilizing this like large, it almost has like a worldwide presence. You like using this large, which I don't know that it does, but I know that like this large audience and this large stage to showcase some really really great actors
Yep.
that are not white. I think this is a great opportunity
Mhm.
for them, and to kind of fix some of the stuff we've been talking about here with their caveat. They might still commit microaggressions against people, but I think not whitewashing them would be a great opportunity for them, and to uplift these voices and to help break some of these people out onto this giant stage that they've made.
Yep. And I think that maybe if they do, I mean, I don't think for next season because we would know about it. But a lot of projects have been very wise at including the main actors as producers eventually, especially when those actors like are like live the experience of a marginalized community of their characters as well, and they can bring a lot to the table because they have been studying that character and bringing it to life. So I am dreaming of a future where where Hudson and Connor are maybe more than just like the actors. I know that not everyone wants to be a producer or anything, but that they might have a seat at the table to discuss how these characters are written and how
Mhm.
we are gonna like portray them beyond like their individual actoral decisions on set, you know? Like we need a less white production team, definitely.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely need a less white publishing industry.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
T. We need a less white everything, honestly. I'm
I
behind it.
You know
agree.
what? Yeah.
Is there anything else that we would like to add? I think we have done all the things, but anything else people want to add?
But to what Lau was saying about us having blind spots, obviously, like the nature of a blind spot is that we don't know what we're missing, but we know that we have them, right? We know that we have the blind spot. And so we can take the time to like find those blind spots and like find the unconscious bias, find the unintentional microaggressions, and work to unlearn them. Like just because something
Mhm.
is blind, like, or is in your blind spot for now, doesn't mean it always has to be there, and it can't be used as an excuse to keep like perpetrating microaggressions or harm against marginalized communities.
No, for sure. I called somebody out
Exactly.
on Threads today, and I was literally like, "Hey,
You
by the
did
way, if
what?
people,"
I am so shocked.
crazy that I said I called somebody out on Threads, and I was like, "Hey, if people of color are saying they don't like how a white person is talking about a person of color, it's your job to listen to them and not invalidate their experience. Hope this helps."
Mm-hmm.
And so the person responded one way, and then like 30 minutes later, they were like, "I have been told I'm wrong, and this is actually a microaggression. I did not know that,
Wow.
and I would like to apologize." And I was like, "This is
Wow.
Wow.
clarity that everybody else needs." Also, I love
Yeah.
that on Threads, people immediately assume that every time I talk about racism, I am a person of color, and then I get to be like, "Well, I'm white," in the reply.
Wild.
People assume a lot of things about you on Threads. I've had I've had to go to war to defend you in the past.
Whoa.
So,
Joining
Ethan,
the
what's
race
up?
war on the side of the white people.
Imagine, can you believe it? Me defending a US white person.
Doing labor for them.
Ethan, I will fight in your comments for you. Just let me loose. Let me loose. I'll go for it.
Lauren, did you have to
Thank
change
you.
our Threads bio to be like run by Lauren
Oh,
or
well,
something?
okay. So, like, I mean,
Yeah,
basically, my
they
PhD is
did.
in fan studies, and I constantly am like on Threads. I'm like, hey, I know what I'm talking about because I have a PhD in fan studies. And sometimes people are like, you're not an expert because you have a PhD in fan studies.
Then what possibly could constitute an expert in that case?
I would love to know.
Excellent question, Ethan.
I
Excellent
am
question.
I am not only a PhD in fan studies, but I have 20 years in fandom. So I think I am an expert maybe at this point in my life. I mean, I'm always learning and I love that. But I don't know. I'll be more of an expert. But okay, nobody else has anything to add?
I just wanted to thank Ethan.
Oh my
This
God,
was so
yes.
great.
Aw.
I've been waiting since January for this. So,
Oh my god.
I'm so
so I'm
excited.
so happy that we finally got to talk about this with you, because
Yes.
I love how you see things. I love how you explain it as well, because some people have good opinions but have no idea how to express them, and you do very good in both sides of the analysis. So I
Thank
loved it.
you. That's
Yeah.
very kind. The like teacher's pet in me is so happy.
No, getting their validation is awesome.
the gifted kid to praise kink pipeline has been satisfied this night.
You know what?
And listen, now you can say like, we are professors, Lauren and I. So now like it's an actual professor telling you good job.
Yeah,
job.
thank you. No, that I'm very grateful to be here. This was like such a lovely conversation. I've been so frustrated with the heated rivalry fandom and like how race is perceived and discussed, and this was just such a good conversation. Yeah.
No, I genuinely think this is like one of our best episodes. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming out.
Aw.
Do you
Real.
have anything you would like to share with our listeners about where they can find you on socials or anything like that?
Yes. So I am on most social media with the username Ethan with two N's KU. I'm most active on Instagram. I do have a TikTok, I could just like I cross post everything. And when did you say this episode was gonna come out?
I think in 2 weeks.
Let me
I
check
think
the
the
schedule.
8th.
The 8th.
I could be wrong,
Okay,
though.
because I can also plug my bindery page. I just got one.
Oh!
So I don't know if
Yeah,
you guys
May
know what that
8th.
is.
No, tell
But-
me.
So it's like a bookish Patreon. And they also they're so cool. If you want to like get a look at people like actually changing the publishing industry, because they basically their model is
Cool.
they like take influencers and like turn them into not editors but like tastemakers who select manuscripts and then like publish them with their own imprints, and it's like very audience interactive, and they publish like majority authors of color and like queer authors. It's really really cool.
Oh, so cool.
But like the lower end, like the lower end of it, they have like the publishing part of it, but then on the other side they also just have like a Patreon page essentially, like, but it's through their own website. So I will be launching that soon, but I'll plug it
Nice.
because I think this will come out after I have that up.
And if not, stay tuned to your socials for launching that.
Yeah. And congratulations on that. And also graduating.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, you're doing so much.
Big moves, big money moves in the world.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yippee.
an adult? Crazy.
Ah!
I don't know what that is.
Me neither.
I'm sure you do. Your Google Scholar
figuring it
page
out.
says you do.
According to my therapist, I am still an adolescent. So.
Everybody's 12, including Lauren.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you again for coming on. We really appreciate this. We will be right back with some fan mail.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure you all remember, but we always do fan mail, or we try to always do fan mail on our episodes. If you want to ever send in fan mail, you can do that on any of our socials, or you can do it to our email, which is srspod@protonmail.com. And you can always send it there as well. Today, we got a piece of fan mail from Susan, not my Susan, but another Susan. And so I'm going to let Amanda take it away.
Yeah, this is a really great email, and so I'm going to read the whole thing. First of all, Susan shares that her first fandoms were Queer as Folk and
Yay!
Heartstopper, which I thought was really fun. Lau was very excited to hear about that. But she writes, my other thought was from the end of the episode and is about Shane's race as portrayed in Heated Rivalry. One thing has been on my mind a lot is that Rachel Reed chose to write a character of color in Shane, but she did choose a character who has the closest proximity to whiteness, half white, half Asian, and colorism is of course very real. Shane, without dark skin and having a Western last name, is going to for sure face less systemic racism and overt racism than Black players, for example. Plus, he's one of the top 2 players in the league, and so he has privilege there. Then, of course, the whole model minority pressure means that he may face more privilege there. Model minority pressure means he may face more acceptance from white people, fans, players, owners, etc., but also more pressure for perfection, which I think is touched on in the show, but certainly not gone into deeply. I'm not an actual hockey fan, but I do have the reference of being a huge baseball fan, and I do know that NHL and MLB share a lot of values, unfortunately. I have zero doubt that the Asian players in the MLB, whose numbers have increased a lot in recent years, experience all sorts of racism, microaggressions, systemic oppression, bias, and stereotyping. But I will say the MLB culture is very much not to talk about those things or to downplay them. I noticed that Shane deflects questions about race in the interview about Tiger and Serena. It's clear he's a character that for now himself probably doesn't want to talk about race, even though of course I completely agree he definitely does experience racism. I have noticed that in the MLB people don't want to talk about the realities of race, and the Asian players themselves have not been publicly outspoken. Shohei Ohtani, for example, you may know is arguably the biggest MLB star on the planet right now. It's true that he gets tons of endorsement deals and is hugely popular here, but it's also true that he has downplayed any overt acts of racism he has experienced and just generally avoids the subject, even though he undoubtedly experiences less overt forms too. In that respect, I do see Shane's approach as somewhat realistic because a lot of players just don't want to speak up. I do wish Rachel had shown more examples of racism in the NHL to us as readers, as Shane undoubtedly experiences them. And I think this encapsulates, end thought. I think this really encapsulates a lot of what we discussed here, and I'm glad that it wasn't just us that picked up on it, that other people in the fandom are picking up on this. And yeah, I do think that this is really common across sports culture. I'm not surprised at all, and the fact that there are real world examples for this is, to me, like, I'm just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Right, and to also compare it to baseball, which has a very high amount of like Latina players in it as well, where like many baseball players come from countries in the Caribbean, like Puerto Rico, like the Dominican Republic, like a lot of these places that we talked about even in this episode a little bit. I think for them to not address racism when it's, you know, maybe more baseball players are players of color, it's like even very different to look at the NHL versus the MLB, just from what I know about baseball.
Yeah, I really appreciate this email, because without knowing it, Susan is kind of in the same wavelength that all of us today in this episode. Of course, I'm very happy about the Queer as Folk and Heartstopper reference in the email. I do think that the issue, as Susan is also pointing out, is not the lack of realism in Shane's portrayal. Is, as we were saying with Ethan earlier, the if so, then why? Like, it makes a lot of sense that Shane is dodging that question. It makes a lot of sense that he is not complaining, openly complaining about it, even to like Ilya later on. What doesn't make sense is the lack of addressing the issue that we have in the series. As Susan pointed out, like, we really wish that Rachel had explored that. And exploring it not always means that the character thinks it or agrees with that point of view. Exploring it means to see how those tensions work and what they do to the character. Like, what does the denial of these issues mean for Shane as he navigates this industry, first as a rookie and then later on as the legend that he becomes? So yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done. Will it be done? We will see. We doubt it, but we appreciate your input, Susan. I strongly agree with what you were saying. Like, it makes sense that he will do it. I just wish that we had some exploration on why it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think this is a lot of like what we similarly addressed with Ethan, like this idea that like, does Shane not want to address his race at all? Like, we don't know anything about Shane and his race because we haven't been given any of it at all. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how things are addressed in Unrivaled and in future seasons of the television series.
Absolutely. I think were those all of our thoughts?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you again to Susan for that fan mail. And once again, thank you so much for Ethan. Go follow them wherever. Please check that out. But also, if you're on socials, check us out. We are on Instagram and Threads at Since Rookie Season Pod. And we are on Twitter at SRS Pod. You can email us at srspod@protonmail.com. I will note that we will see your email. Sometimes it might take us a couple days to respond just because I want to get input from the others and I need to fit email time into my work-life balance. But yes, thank you so much for tuning in. This was honestly one of my favorite episodes ever. I think this is one of our best ones to come out.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to edit this and get this out to y'all. And we will be back next week for an episode on neurodivergence with a couple guests and some of our close friends. So very excited to get that together.
Friends of Pod.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you all next week.
Thanks for listening.